7th grade life science. These are going to be part of our notes for chapter 2. We are doing section 1. So coming off of yesterday's discussion in class, what does it mean to be alive and what do living things have in common? So you do not have to put this in your notes right now, but after this session of notes, you should be able to list and describe the 6 characteristics that all living things have in common. Describe the difference between sexual and asexual reproduction. Define and describe homeostasis, DNA, heredity, and metabolism. So those are our main goals for chapter 2, section 1. Alright, so after this slide, you're going to be putting all this into your science notebook. Give it a title right here, chapter 2, section 1, 6 characteristics that all living things have in common. Feel free to pause this as much as you need to. So you take your time. Don't be in a rush. Alright, so at this point we are getting these things into our science notebook. Again, pause as needed to get this. So here are the 6 characteristics that all living things have in common. Again, this goes from things like bacteria that live in the atmosphere or the bottom of the ocean, to elephants, to people, to fish in the ocean. You have a sea anemone right there. So all living things are made of cells, or at least one cell. They all sense and respond to change, so we call that stimuli for plural, or stimulus. They all reproduce. They all have DNA. They all use some sort of energy, and they all grow and develop. So anything that's considered alive has to meet all of these 6 characteristics. So let's go through and take a look at each one. So all living things, number 1, are made of cells or one cell. So here's an electron microscope image of red blood cells. Here's a computer-generated image of a basic cell. So let's say you're a bacteria. Okay, a bacteria is only one cell. And so what they can do is they can grow in size. And then they can replicate themselves, but they are a single-celled organism. You are made up of a lot of cells, so you're a multicellular organism. The bottom line, though, if you are a living creature, you have to be made up of at least one cell. So a cell membrane, that's a covered structure, and inside there, everything needed for life is in there. Not all cells are the exact same. So in your body, you have nerve cells and muscle cells. So they have specialized jobs, and we'll get into more of that later in the semester here. Number 2 on our list is sense and respond to change. So whether you're a bacteria living in mud and you swim down deeper into the mud because it's too hot, or you are a wildebeest running away from lions or cheetahs, you're responding to changes in your environment, which are called stimuli. So a stimulus, that's anything that causes something to respond. It could be light, darkness, could be chemicals, gravity, predators. Stimulus could be lots of things in the environment that cause you to act. So living things respond to stimuli millions of times a day. You do it all the time and you don't even realize it. So why do living things do this? So here comes a vocab word. They want to maintain homeostasis. So homeostasis, that is when something is maintaining a stable internal environment. You try and keep your body temperature by shivering if you're too cold, sweating if you're too hot. You're trying to maintain a stable internal environment in your body, and all living things are trying to do this. Number 2, we're still on number 2. We had some questions in class about this. So even things like plants, yeah, they'll respond to light. So in this aquarium, plants will move around to get a better shot at getting more light. Happened with me with my own tomato plants at home. They were competing with each other and growing in 90-degree angles to get to the window. Okay, number 3 on our list. All living things must reproduce. So they have to make another generation. So what would happen to a species, animal, plant if they didn't reproduce? That's an obvious answer, right? They wouldn't exist anymore. They would go extinct. So there's 2 types of reproduction. There's sexual reproduction. So that's at least 2 parents. If you're a salmon, you might have 1 female and multiple males, but you at least have 2 parents. And then there's asexual reproduction. So that's 1 parent making exact copies of their offspring. So offspring are children. You could think of this as cloning. So cloning is not something just in the movies. That is asexual reproduction, and it absolutely happens all over the planet with different types of animals. Number 4 on our list. So all living things have DNA. So that's deoxyribonucleic acid. Don't worry about memorizing that. Just know DNA. Okay, so as of now in science, cells are the smallest things that can be alive. All cells have genetic material, and we call that DNA. So this DNA has instructions, it's like computer code, for making things called proteins. So proteins is more than just what you're eating when you eat a moose steak or a hamburger. Proteins are extremely diverse, and they have all kinds of different jobs. We will get into proteins a little bit later in the semester. Heredity, so here's one of your vocab words. So that's just passing your DNA or your genes to your next generation. So a common example is something like eye color. So eye color is a gene in your DNA, and heredity means, I passed my hazel eye gene onto my daughter. My son has the blue eye gene from my wife, and so that's heredity, passing it to the next generation. Number 5 on our list, all living things have to use some sort of energy. So if you look at our pictures, if you're a lion, you could be eating other animals. This picture right down here, so these are hydrothermal vents. So this is a submersible taking these pictures with big bright lights. Normally this would be in absolute pitch black darkness. But there's tube worms and there's bacteria that feed on this coming from inside of the earth. To humans, this would be toxic and kill you. But other organisms use it for their energy. So this takes us to a vocab word for the chapter, metabolism. So this word is used to describe complex chemical happenings that are associated with getting energy from the food we eat. There is a lot to this. We just want to get the basics with you. So it's basically what happens in your body when you eat something. All living things must consume some kind of food to get energy, and they have to get rid of waste products. So all living things have to do this, and this is metabolism. Again, what's really cool about living on this planet is you got to get away from thinking what humans eat, and we're going to explore lots of different types of critters out there. Really cool ones are things like bacteria that live in these really hostile environments. We call them extremophiles, and we'll visit that stuff all year long. They're really, really neat, and there's some cool research on them right now. Okay, the last one on our list today is that all living things grow and develop. So even microscopic things, single-celled organisms like a bacteria, they grow and they develop and they become larger in size. But just because we can't see them right now, they're on your skin right now, they're all over the surfaces in your house, they're in the air that we breathe, they're down in the soil. Most of them do no harm to you. So just because you hear the word bacteria, don't think that it's going to make you sick. Some of them will, but most of them aren't going to cause you any harm. So you obviously grow a lot since you've come into this world. So humans, we are multicellular organisms. So instead of just our cells getting bigger, we also grow by increasing the number of cells that make up our body. And I just thought this was a really cool fact, that a bull moose's antlers are the fastest growing tissue in the animal kingdom. I think that's pretty amazing. They're pretty cool animals. And last, of course, so this is not on the list of 6. However, we know that all living things eventually have to end and they have to die. So nothing can live forever. So death is there in this cycle on our planet. And every atom in the living things around us will someday be recycled back into other living things. So if you think of the fungi field trip that we did, those are decomposers. So even though a tree might be dying, so like in this picture, this fungus is actually eating on that dead material. So carbon atoms, water in here is going to make its way into another living organism. So that's where we say right here, nothing is ever truly destroyed or lost. This is the law of conservation of mass or matter. Matter cannot be created or destroyed. It can go into different things, but the hydrogen and the oxygens that make up the water in your body doesn't just magically disappear. Say when your life ends and you get decomposed into the ground and it's 400 years later, all those atoms that made up your body can be reused in other life forms. So this is what I think is cool. I think about this stuff all the time. So it says, heck, you might have atoms in your body right now that used to be in a prehistoric saber-toothed tiger. I think those are real cool animals. That's why I picked that. But you could have carbon, hydrogen, all sorts of different atoms in your living tissues right now that way, way in the past could have been part of a different living creature. So Earth is this massive recycling system, and it's really, really amazing. And I hope as this year goes on, you'll develop a greater appreciation for an amazing planet that we live on. So that is the first section of Chapter 2. Again, rewind, go back to things that you need to, and there'll be more to come on this. Okay, so there's your notes. Email me with any questions, and thanks for tuning in.